The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. Nobody remembered a time before it existed. Nobody wanted to remember. The Concord was peace. The Concord was order. The Concord was everything. 1,200 different species lived under its protection. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of pure light. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as thoughts floating through space. But they all agreed on one thing: war was bad. War was something that primitive species did before they grew wise. War was a disease that civilized beings had cured long ago. The great fleets of the Concord were beautiful things. Their ships looked like crystals floating through the darkness. They glowed with soft colors and made gentle humming sounds as they moved. These ships had meditation rooms and art galleries. They had gardens where rare flowers grew under artificial suns. They had libraries containing the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds. What they did not have was weapons. Not real weapons. They had small devices that could disable a ship's engines. They had tools that could create force fields. But actual weapons designed to kill and destroy, those had been banned for thousands of years. Nobody needed them. The Concord kept everyone safe. High Counselor Morthax was a being of great age and greater wisdom. His body was made of living crystal, and light passed through him in beautiful patterns when he spoke. He had served on the council for 300 years. He had seen disputes between species resolved through careful negotiation. He had seen economic disagreements solved through trade agreements. He had never seen war. He never expected to see war. That changed on what the Concord would later call the Day of Shadows. The first report came from a small colony on the edge of known space. The colony had stopped sending messages. This happened sometimes. Equipment failed. Storms disrupted communications. The Concord sent a repair ship to investigate. The repair ship never returned. They sent another ship. It also disappeared. Finally, they sent a full observation fleet, 50 crystal ships carrying scientists and diplomats. These ships had the best sensors in the galaxy. They could detect a single heartbeat from 1,000 miles away. They could analyze the chemical composition of a planet just by looking at it. What they found made no sense. The colony was gone. Not destroyed. Not abandoned. Gone. The buildings were still there, but they were empty shells. The ground was bare rock where forests had once grown. The oceans were empty pools of dead water. Every living thing on the planet had vanished. Even the bacteria in the soil were gone. The scientists ran their tests again and again. The results were always the same. Something had come to this world and taken everything that lived. Plants, animals, people, all of them. Gone. Perhaps they evacuated, suggested one diplomat hopefully. There are no ship trails, replied the lead scientist. No evidence of departure. They did not leave. They were taken. Before anyone could respond, the sensors screamed a warning. Something was coming. Something big. The observation fleet tried to run. They were fast ships, designed to cross vast distances quickly. But the things that came out of the darkness were faster. The Concord called them the Vethkai, a word that meant hunger that walks in one of the oldest languages. But the Vethkai had no name for themselves. Names were for beings that thought. The Vethkai did not think. They only consumed. Their ships were not built. They were grown. Massive things of flesh and bone and hatred, larger than moons, covered in eyes that saw in spectrums no other species could imagine. They moved through space like sharks through water, silent and inevitable. The observation fleet lasted 4 minutes. The council received one final transmission before the screaming stopped. They're eating us. The ships. They're eating the ships whole. Send help. Send anyone. Send. Then nothing. Morthax called an emergency session of the council. Representatives from all 1,200 species gathered in the Great Chamber, a room so large it had its own weather system. Clouds drifted between the pillars that held up its ceiling. Light filtered down from windows that showed different skies from different worlds. "We face a threat," Morthax announced. His crystal body pulsed with worried colors. A threat unlike anything in our recorded history. The representatives murmured among themselves. Threats were handled through diplomacy. Everyone knew this. "We will send ambassadors," declared Representative Yishina, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of silver threads. "We will negotiate. We will find common ground." "We tried," said Morthax. "We sent a diplomatic vessel with our best negotiators." The Vethkai did not respond to any communication attempt. They simply consumed the ship and everyone aboard. Silence fell over the chamber. Consumed. The word hung in the air like poison. "Then we will blockade them," suggested Representative Koth, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like tree bark. "We will surround them and prevent them from spreading." "With what ships?" asked Morthax. "Our fleets are not designed for combat. They have no weapons." The Vethkai tore through our observation fleet like it was made of paper. More silence. The representatives looked at each other with growing fear. For the first time in 11,000 years, they faced a problem that could not be solved with words. The months that followed were dark ones for the Concord. The Vethkai spread across the outer systems like a plague. World after world went silent. The pattern was always the same. First the communications stopped. Then the scout ships disappeared. Then nothing remained but empty rocks floating in space. The Concord built new ships. They dug out old weapon designs from archives that had not been opened in millennia. They trained crews in combat tactics that nobody had practiced in generations. It was not enough that the Vethkai were not just hungry. They were clever. Their bioships adapted to every weapon the Concord developed. Energy beams that worked once never worked again. Missiles that destroyed one target were absorbed harmlessly by the next. The Concord was fighting an enemy that learned and evolved faster than they could invent. Worse, the Vethkai had weapons of their own. Their bioships could scream across the void of space, and that scream carried something terrible. Beings who heard it went mad. They saw things that were not there. They felt fears that had no name. Entire crews turned on each other, tearing themselves apart while the Vethkai watched and waited, and then moved in to feed. Within a year, the Concord had lost 100 worlds. Within 2 years, 500. The great fleets that had once patrolled the stars in peace were scattered. Wreckage floating through the darkness. High Counselor Morthax stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He spent every hour in the command center, watching the map of known space grow darker as more and more systems fell. He was watching the end of everything he had ever known, and he had no idea how to stop it. Then Representative Yishina came to him with a suggestion that made his crystal blood run cold. "The humans," Yishina said. "We should ask the humans." Morthax turned slowly. His light flickered with emotions he could not name. "The humans are quarantined. They have been quarantined for 300 years. You know why." "I know why," Yishana agreed. "But I also know what they are. What they can do. We watched them, Morthax. For centuries, we watched them. That is precisely why we quarantined them." Humans. Even the word felt dangerous. The Concord had discovered humanity 300 years ago, when the primitive species had just started reaching beyond their home world. The Council had sent observers to study them, expecting to find the usual pattern: a young species learning peace, growing wise, preparing to join galactic society. They found something else entirely. Humans had spent their entire existence at war. Not war like the occasional border disputes other species experienced before they matured. Real war. Constant war. War as a way of life. They fought each other over land, over resources, over ideas, over gods. They developed weapons with terrifying creativity. When one weapon failed, they built a better one. When their enemies adapted, they adapted faster. But it was not just their talent for violence that frightened the council. It was their talent for enjoying it. They made art about war. They sang songs about it. Their children played games pretending to fight and kill. Violence was woven into every part of their culture, and they showed no signs of outgrowing it. The council made a decision. Humanity was too dangerous to integrate into galactic society. They were also too young to destroy. The Concord did not believe in genocide. So they chose a middle path, containment. A field of energy was placed around Earth's solar system. Humans could not pass through it. More importantly, they could not detect it. From their perspective, space simply ended at a certain point. Their probes disappeared. Their ships vanished. They eventually stopped trying to push beyond their immediate neighborhood, believing the universe was smaller than it actually was. The council told themselves they were protecting humanity, giving them time to mature. But everyone knew the truth. They were protecting themselves from humanity. They've been locked in that system for 300 years, Morthak said. Alone, without contact. What do you think they have become in that time? That is exactly my point, Ishina replied. They have been alone, contained, focused, and they are a species that never stops building weapons, never stops preparing for war. If anyone can fight the Vethkai, it is them. And if they decide to fight us instead? Ishina's silver threads rippled with something that might have been a shrug. Then we die fighting humans instead of Vethkai. At least it will be quick. The debate in the council lasted for weeks. Some argued that releasing the humans was madness. Others argued that doing nothing was worse. The Vethkai were coming. They did not slow down. They did not negotiate. Every day brought them closer to the core worlds, the heart of the Concord, the center of everything. In the end, fear won. The council voted to contact humanity. Ambassador Velthris was chosen for the mission. She was a being of pure light, ancient and wise, respected by all species. She had negotiated treaties that ended centuries of conflict. She had brokered peace between enemies who had hated each other for generations. If anyone could handle the humans, it was her. The containment field around Earth's system was lowered just enough to allow a single ship through. Velthris traveled alone. She wanted no escort, no protection. She would meet the humans as an equal, with respect and openness. She expected to find primitive people in simple ships. She expected gratitude for the attention of a superior species. She expected to explain the situation and receive humble offers of assistance. She was very, very wrong. When her ship entered the solar system, she was immediately surrounded. Massive shapes emerged from the darkness between planets. Ships unlike anything the Concord had ever built. They were ugly things. Black and angular, covered in weapons that her sensors could not identify, crewed by beings that showed no fear at all. A voice came through her communication system. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, the common language of the Concord. But it spoke with an accent she did not recognize, cold and hard like metal scraping against metal. Unknown vessel, you have entered United Earth space. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Velthris composed herself. She had dealt with aggressive species before. She knew how to project calm and authority. I am Ambassador Velthris of the Galactic Concord. I come in peace to speak with your leaders about a matter of great importance. There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, and this time there was something in it that made her light flicker with unease, Amusement. The human was amused. The Galactic Concorde. Yes, we know who you are. We have been expecting you. Expecting me? Please proceed to the following coordinates. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin will meet with you aboard the UN Defiance. The coordinates led to a ship that made Velthris' S-vessel look like a toy. The Defiance was massive, larger than many space stations, bristling with weapons that her sensors could not even properly analyze. As she approached, she saw the symbols painted on its hull, a blue world surrounded by stars, and words in a human language that her translator rendered as Earth's shield. She docked and was escorted through corridors of gray metal by humans in matching uniforms. They walked with a purpose she had rarely seen. Their eyes were alert, constantly scanning for threats. Their bodies were ready for violence at any moment. Even here, in the safety of their own ship, they acted like soldiers in enemy territory. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin was waiting in a room filled with screens and maps. She was small by human standards, with gray hair pulled back from a lined face. But her eyes were sharp, and she smiled when Velthris entered in a way that showed no warmth at all. "Ambassador," the Admiral said, "welcome to Earth space. Please, sit." Velthris settled into a chair that was clearly not designed for beings of light. She began her prepared speech. "Admiral, I come to you in a time of great crisis. The Galactic Concorde faces a threat that..." "The Vethkai," the Admiral interrupted. "We know." Velthris stopped. "You know? We have been monitoring Concorde communications for 300 years. The Admiral tapped her datapad, and suddenly the screens around them filled with images. Battles. Destroyed worlds. The spreading darkness of Vethkai territory. We know everything. The invasion. The defeats. The Council's decision to contact us as a last resort. How is that possible? The containment field leaked. Your technology is impressive, Ambassador, but not perfect. We caught fragments of your transmissions. We learned your languages. We studied your ships. And we prepared." The Admiral stood and walked to a window that showed the stars outside. "For 300 years, we were locked in a cage. Told we were not ready. Told we were too primitive, too violent, too dangerous. And maybe you were right. We are violent. We are dangerous. But we are also patient." She turned back to Velthris, and her smile widened. "We knew someday the cage would open. We did not know why, but we knew it would happen. So we prepared. We built ships. We developed weapons. We trained soldiers. And now here you are, asking for help. Because everything you built in 11,000 years cannot stop creatures that we would have been fighting since the first day we entered space if you had let us." Velthris tried to speak, but no words came. She had prepared for many possibilities. She had not prepared for this. "You want humanity's help?" Admiral Chen asked. "You will have it. But understand this, we will not be your servants. We will not follow your rules. We will fight this war our way, with our weapons and our tactics and our people. And when it is over..." She leaned forward, and the light in her eyes was something Velthris had never seen before. Something ancient. Something hungry. "When it is over, we will talk about cages. We will talk about 300 years of imprisonment. We will talk about all the things the Concorde decided we were too dangerous to know." Velthris wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to justify the Council's decisions. But looking at the Admiral, looking at the ships outside the window, looking at the maps of prepared battle plans on the screens around her, she realized something terrible. The Concorde had been right to fear humanity. They just had not been afraid enough. The news spread across the Concorde like fire through dry grass. Humanity was coming. After 300 years of silence, the caged species was finally being released. reactions varied. Some species felt hope. Perhaps these strange, violent beings could do what the Concord could not. Perhaps they could stop the Vethkai. Perhaps they could save everyone. Others felt fear. They remembered why humanity had been quarantined in the first place. They had seen the recordings of human history, the wars, the weapons, the endless capacity for destruction. Inviting humans to fight the Vethkai might be like inviting a hurricane to stop a flood. The immediate problem might be solved, but what came after could be even worse. Fleet Commander Yothan belonged to the second group. He was a tall being with blue skin and 3 eyes, born on a world of endless oceans. His people had given up violence so long ago that they no longer had words for most weapons. The idea of deliberate killing was almost impossible for them to understand. He had been assigned to observe the human fleet as it emerged from the quarantine zone. His ship, a serene thought, was positioned at a safe distance with orders to watch and report. The council wanted to know exactly what humanity had built during their centuries of isolation. Lothan expected to see something primitive. Humans were young. They had been locked away from galactic technology. Surely their ships would be crude, their weapons simple, their numbers small. The containment field dropped at exactly the scheduled time. For a moment, nothing happened. Space remained empty and dark. Then the stars began to move. "What am I seeing?" Yothan asked, staring at his sensors. His aide, a younger officer named Keth, checked the readings twice before answering. His voice was shaking. "Ships, Commander." "Human ships. How many?" "I." Keth swallowed hard. "The sensors cannot count them all. They came through the breach like a river of steel." Warships of every size poured out of the quarantine zone in formations so precise they seemed choreographed. Small ships moved in swarms around larger vessels. Medium ships held formation with mathematical perfection. And behind them, emerging slowly like mountains rising from the sea, came the dreadnoughts. Yothan had seen the Concord's largest ships. He had thought them impressive. But the human dreadnoughts made those vessels look like toys. Each one was miles long, bristling with weapons that his sensors could not identify. Painted in colors of black and gray that made them almost invisible against the darkness of space. "Ancestors preserve us," Keth whispered. "What have they been doing in there?" Yothan could not answer. He was too busy counting. His sensors had finally caught up with the numbers, and what they showed was impossible. 700 warships. Not counting the smaller support vessels. Not counting the transport ships. Not counting the specialized craft whose purposes he could not guess. 700 warships, each one designed from the ground up for a single purpose: destruction. The Concord's entire fleet. Gathered from 1,000 worlds, numbered perhaps 200 combat-capable vessels. Most of those were converted merchant ships with hastily added weapons. None of them were truly built for war. Humanity had built 700 warships while locked in a cage, cut off from the galaxy, with only their own resources and their own determination. And Yothan suspected that these were only the ships they were willing to show. A communication request came through. Yothan accepted it with trembling hands. Admiral Chun Wei-Lin's face appeared on his screen. She looked exactly as the reports had described. Small, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. "Fleet Commander Yothan," she said. "Thank you for coming to meet us. I hope our fleet does not alarm you." Yothan tried to find words. "Admiral, the size of your force. We did not expect. We have been preparing for a long time, Commander. And now we are ready to help. I trust the Council received our proposed battle plans?" Yes, they are being reviewed." The Admiral's smile did not reach her eyes. "Good. We move toward the Kessler system in 6 hours. The Vethkai have a major force gathering there. We intend to destroy it. 6 hours? But the Council has not approved, Commander. The Admiral's voice was patient but firm. The Concorde asked for our help. We are giving it. We will destroy the Vethkai wherever we find them, using whatever methods we choose. The Council can approve or disapprove as they wish. It will not change our actions. The transmission ended. Yathan sat in his chair for a long moment, trying to process what he had seen and heard. Commander? Keth asked. What do? We follow them, Yathan said quietly. We watch. And we pray to our ancestors that we never give them a reason to turn those ships toward us. The human fleet moved through Concorde space like nothing Yathan had ever seen. They did not drift lazily between stars like Concorde vessels. They did not stop to admire the beauty of nebulae or investigate interesting phenomena. They moved with purpose, always forward, always toward the enemy dot as they traveled. Yathan learned more about human ships than he had ever wanted to know. His sensors worked constantly, analyzing everything they could detect. What they found was terrifying. Human ships had no gardens, no meditation chambers, no art galleries. Every inch of space was dedicated to warfare. Their hulls were layered with armor so thick that Yathan's weapons would barely scratch the surface. Their engines burned fuel at rates that would bankrupt most species, all for the sake of speed and maneuverability. And the weapons. Oh, the weapons. Railguns that accelerated metal slugs to speeds approaching light itself. Missiles in numbers beyond counting, each one carrying warheads of terrifying variety. Energy weapons that burned in frequencies the Concorde had never explored. Point defense systems so dense that approaching them would be like flying into a wall of fire. But what disturbed Yathan most were the small ships. Every major vessel carried dozens of them, tiny craft barely large enough for a single pilot. The Concorde had abandoned crude combat vehicles thousands of years ago. The casualty rates were unacceptable. Automated drones could do the same job without risking lives. Humans apparently disagreed. They filled those tiny ships with their own people, sent them into combat knowing many would die, and called it acceptable. Why do they do it? Keth asked one evening. Why risk their own people when machines could fight instead? Yathan had wondered the same thing. He had found an answer in the human records they had shared, but he was not sure Keth would understand it. Humans believe there is value in personal sacrifice, he said slowly. They believe that sending a machine to fight shows less commitment than sending themselves. It is a matter of honor, I think. Though I am not sure the word means the same thing to them as it does to us. That's insane. Perhaps. But look at their fleet, Keth. Look at what they have built. Insane or not, they are effective. The Kessler system appeared on their sensors 3 days later. It had once been home to 3 inhabited worlds, each one beautiful in its own way. Now it was a graveyard. The Vethkai had stripped it clean, leaving nothing but bare rock and empty space. But they had not left. A major Vethkai force had gathered there, perhaps waiting for reinforcements, perhaps preparing for the next wave of attacks. Dozens of bioships floated in the darkness, their massive forms pulsing with alien life. Yathan expected the humans to slow down, to observe, to plan. Instead, they accelerated. All ships to battle stations. Admiral Chun's voice came through every speaker in the fleet. First wave will consist of the 3rd and 5th battle groups. Carrier wings launch in 10 minutes. Remember your training. Remember your purpose. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can do. The Vethkai noticed the approaching fleet. Their bioships began to move, arranging themselves in the formation they had used to destroy 100 Concorde fleets. They were confident. They had never lost a battle. They saw no reason why today would be different. They were wrong. The human ships opened fire at ranges, the Vethkai had never encountered. Railgun slugs crossed the distance between the fleets in heartbeats, striking the nearest bioships with the force of small moons. Holes the size of cities opened in alien flesh. Screams echoed across frequencies that should not have carried sound. The Vethkai responded with their own weapons. Beams of psionic energy lanced out toward the human fleet. The same weapons that had driven Concorde crews mad with fear that something strange happened. The beams struck human ships and nothing, no madness. No crew members tearing each other apart. The humans had somehow shielded their minds against the Vethkai's greatest weapon. Then the missiles came. Yathan had seen missile attacks before. The Concorde used them occasionally, small surgical strikes against specific targets. The humans did not believe in surgical strikes. They believed in overwhelming force. Thousands of missiles erupted from the human fleet. Not hundreds, thousands. They filled space like a swarm of angry insects, each one carrying death in a dozen different forms. Some were explosive. Some were nuclear. Some carried substances that Yathan's sensors could not identify, but which made the Vethkai bioships scream in agony when they struck. The battle lasted 19 hours. Yathan watched every moment of it, recording everything for the Council. He saw things that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. He saw human fighters diving into clouds of Vethkai defenders, destroying enemies 3 times their size through nothing but skill and courage. He saw human ships deliberately ramming wounded bioships, their crews dying to ensure their enemies died with them. He saw the Vethkai retreat for the first time in 4 billion years, their remaining ships fleeing into the darkness while human vessels hunted them down one by one. When it was over, the Kessler system was littered with the corpses of Vethkai bioships. Not a single one had escaped. The human fleet had lost 43 ships and over 12,000 lives, but they had won. Completely, totally, without question. Admiral Chun's voice came through the communications channel, broadcast on every frequency for the entire galaxy to hear. This is Admiral Chun Wei-Lin of the United Earth Navy. The Vethkai force in the Kessler system has been destroyed. We are proceeding to the next target. Any Concorde vessels in the area are welcome to observe, but stay out of our way. The line is held. Send more. Yathan sat in silence as his ship drifted among the wreckage. Around him, the human fleet was already reforming, already preparing to move, already hunting for the next battle. They did not stop to mourn their dead. They did not pause to celebrate their victory. They simply moved on to the next fight. "Commander," Kef said quietly, "I think I understand now why the Council was afraid of them." Yathan nodded slowly. "Yes, but I think the Council was afraid of the wrong thing." "What do you mean?" "They were afraid humans would conquer us, enslave us, use their violence against us." Yathan watched as a human carrier recovered its surviving fighters, already preparing them for the next battle. "But that is not what I see. I see a species that has found something worthy of their violence, something that deserves to be destroyed." He turned to look at Keth, and his 3 eyes were filled with an emotion he had never felt before. It took him a moment to recognize it as hope. "I think the Council's mistake was not keeping them locked away. The mistake was not releasing them sooner. If the humans had been free 3 years ago, the Vethkai might never have become a threat at all." The human fleet jumped to faster than light, speed vanishing from the system in pursuit of their enemy. Behind them, they left a message written in the corpses of monsters. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Across 1,000 worlds, beings who had never known hope began to feel something change. The darkness was not unstoppable. The Vethkai could be beaten. Someone had finally stood up and said, "No more," that someone was humanity, and they were just getting started. In his office aboard the Defiance, Admiral Chun reviewed the battle reports. The losses were acceptable. The tactics had worked. The enemy had shown weaknesses they could exploit. She allowed herself a small smile. 300 years of preparation. 300 years of waiting, building, training. 300 years locked in a cage while the galaxy ignored them and feared them in equal measure. Now the cage was open. Now humanity had a purpose. And Chun knew with absolute certainty that they would not stop until the Vethkai were nothing but a memory. She pressed a button on her desk, opening a channel to the fleet. All commands, this is Admiral Chun. Outstanding work today, but the war is just beginning. We've identified 17 more Vethkai positions across the outer systems. Our mission is clear. Find them, fight them, destroy them. No mercy, no retreat, no surrender. She paused, looking out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vethkai were learning what fear felt like for the first time in 4 billion years. Humanity has entered the war, she said quietly, and we will end it. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving the graveyard of Kessler behind. Ahead of them lay more battles, more death, more sacrifice. But also ahead of them lay victory. They could feel it. They had been born for this, trained for this, waiting for this their entire existence as a species. The galaxy had spent 300 years afraid of what humanity might become. Now they would learn what humanity had always been. Admiral James Okonkwo had been a soldier for 37 years. He had served on ships from the smallest patrol craft to the largest dreadnoughts. He had trained for combat his entire adult life, studying battles that had happened before he was born and planning for battles that might never come. Now he finally had his war. He stood on the bridge of the UN Thermopylae, flagship of the 3rd Battle Group. Around him, his crew moved with calm efficiency, checking systems and monitoring sensors. They were good people, trained, ready. Some of them would die today. Okonkwo accepted this the way he accepted the stars and the darkness. It was simply part of the universe. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported. Vethkai fleet detected at the edge of the system. Approximately 170 bioships, including 3 high vessels. Okonkwo nodded. High vessels were the largest Vethkai ships, massive things that served as mobile command centers for their mindless fleets. Destroying them would cripple the enemy's coordination. Of course, they were also the most heavily defended targets in the system. How many ships do we have? He asked. 63 combat vessels, sir, plus fighter wings and support craft. The numbers were bad. The Vethkai outnumbered them almost 3 to 1. In any normal battle, this would be cause for retreat. The Concord had established long ago that engaging a superior force was foolish. Okonkwo smiled. Then it's a fair fight. All ships to battle stations. Prepare for engagement. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Some might have called it concern. Others might have called it anticipation. After decades of training for a war that never came, they were finally facing a real enemy. No simulations. No exercises. Real combat against real monsters. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, his second in command, moved to his side. Sir, the Concord observers are requesting permission to fall back to a safe distance. Denied. They wanted to see how humans fight. They can watch from where they are. He turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to the fleet. Channel open, sir. Okonkwo took a breath. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. Every speech, every inspiration, every word had been building to this. All ships, this is Admiral Okonkwo. Today, we face an enemy that has never known defeat. For 4 billion years, they have consumed and destroyed without opposition. They believe they are unstoppable. They believe the universe belongs to them. He paused, letting the words sink in. We are going to teach them how wrong they are. Our mission is simple. Hold this system. Do not let them pass. Behind us are 3 inhabited worlds that have not yet been evacuated. Millions of innocent beings are counting on us to protect them. We will not fail them. The Vethkai do not understand what we are. They see us as just another species to consume. They do not know that humanity was born in fire. They do not know that we have been fighting and dying and surviving since before their ancestors crawled out of whatever pit created them. They think we are prey. His voice hardened. Show them what predators look like. All ships advance. The 3rd battle group moved forward as one. 63 ships arranged in a formation that maximized their overlapping fields of fire. The smaller vessels stayed close to the larger ones, using their point defense systems to create a web of protection. The carriers hung back, preparing to launch their fighters at the optimal moment. The Vethkai saw them coming. Their bioships began to shift, arranging themselves in the familiar attack pattern that had destroyed so many Concord fleets. The 3 high vessels moved to the center of the formation, protected by layers of smaller ships. They're not running, Kim observed. They still think they can win. Let them think that, Okonkwo replied. Overconfidence is a gift. All ships, execute Pattern Delta on my mark. Carriers, hold your fighters until we break their formation. Pattern Delta confirmed, sir. The 2 fleets closed with each other. At extreme range, the Vethkai opened fire with their psionic weapons. Waves of mental energy washed over the human ships, the same attack that had driven Concord crews insane. The humans felt it. They could not ignore it entirely, but they had prepared for this. Every human ship was equipped with psionic dampeners, technology they had developed in secret after studying captured Concord records. The attack was painful, but not disabling. The crews gritted their teeth and kept fighting. Interesting, a Concord observer transmitted. How did you develop countermeasures so quickly? We didn't develop them quickly, Okonkwo replied without taking his eyes from the battle display. We developed them 300 years ago, based on your own research. You just never thought to use them because you never expected to need them. The fleets entered weapons range. Okonkwo raised his hand. All ships, mark. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Railguns sent tungsten slugs screaming across space at near light speed. Missiles erupted from launchers by the thousands. Energy weapons painted the darkness with killing light. The Vethkai formation shattered. Ships that had never known damage found themselves torn apart by forces they could not comprehend. Their adaptive armor, which had stopped every Concord weapon, could not handle the sheer variety of human attacks. Every weapon used different principles. Every missile carried a different payload. By the time the bioships adapted to one threat, 3 more were already killing them. Launch fighters, Okonkwo ordered. From the carriers, swarms of small craft poured into space. Each one was piloted by a human being who knew they might not survive the next hour. Each one was willing to die for this victory. The Concord thought this was madness. Humans knew it was courage. The fighters dove into the Vethkai formation like wolves among sheep. They were too small and too fast for the bioship's main weapons. They targeted weak points, engine clusters, sensory organs, the gaps between armored plates. Where they hit hard. Pilot Officer Maya Chun flew her fighter through a storm of organic debris. Her targeting computer painted enemy weak points in red, and she hit every one. 3 kills. 5. 7. Her squadron was cutting a path through the Vethkai defenses toward the high vessels. "Bravo Squadron on me," she called. "We're going for the big ones." "Copy that, Bravo Lead. What's the plan?" Maya grinned behind her helmet. "Get close. Shoot the soft parts. Don't die. Simple." "I like it." The squadron dove toward the nearest high vessel. It was massive, larger than some moons, covered in eyes and weapons and things that Maya could not identify. Its defenses were formidable, shooting down 2 of her pilots before they even got close. But Maya was the best pilot in the 3rd battle group. She had earned that rank through 10,000 hours of simulation and training. Now she proved it was not just numbers on a record. She flew her fighter through gaps that should have been impossible, dodging weapons fire by instinct rather than calculation. Her shots hit critical systems with perfect precision. When her missiles ran out, she used her cannons. When her cannons overheated, she used her ship itself, ramming into a sensor cluster and tearing it apart with her hull before pulling away at the last second. The hive vessel shuddered. Warning signals erupted across its surface. Somehow, the tiny human had done what massive warships could not. She had heard it. "Good hit, Bravo lead," her wingman called. "The hive vessel is losing coordination. The smaller ships are going confused. Then let's keep the pressure on. All units, concentrate fire on the hive vessels. Take them down, and the rest will fall apart." Back on the Thermopylae, Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. His pilots were doing exactly what they had trained to do. His ships were holding their formations. The Vethkai were dying in numbers they had never experienced. But it was not enough. Not yet. "Sir," Kim reported, "the remaining 2 hive vessels are trying to retreat. If they escape, they'll warn the rest of the Vethkai about our capabilities. Then we don't let them escape." Okonkwo turned to his navigation officer. "Plot an intercept course. Maximum speed." "Sir, that will put us deep in the enemy formation." "I know. Do it anyway." The Thermopylae surged forward, leaving the relative safety of the fleet formation. Other ships followed, captains making the same calculation their admiral had made. Some things were more important than survival. The remaining Vethkai bioships turned to face this new threat. They concentrated their fire on the Thermopylae, pounding its shields with everything they had. The ship shook under the assault. Alarms began to sound. Damage reports flooded in. "Shields at 40%, Kim reported. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Casualties mounting." "Keep firing," Okonkwo ordered. "Every second we keep their attention is a second our fighters have to finish the hive vessels." The battle became a desperate race. The Thermopylae and its escorts traded fire with the Vethkai at point-blank range, each side trying to destroy the other before being destroyed themselves. Human ships exploded in bowls of fire. Vethkai bioships ruptured and died screaming. Maya Shen led her remaining fighters in a final assault on the 2nd hive vessel. Her ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere, barely holding together. Half her squadron was dead. But the hive vessel was right there, its defenses weakened, its hull exposed. "Bravo, squadron," she transmitted. "One last run. Make it count." They dove together, 7 fighters against a monster the size of a mountain. The hive vessel's remaining weapons reached out for them, destroying 2 more pilots in moments. But the survivors kept coming. Maya's targeting computer locked onto the hive vessel's central mass. She could see the vital organs beneath the surface, the things that kept a creature alive. One good shot would end it. She pulled the trigger. Her remaining missiles launched, streaking toward the target. Behind her, her surviving squadmates added their own fire. The combined assault struck the hive vessel in its most vulnerable spot. The creature shuddered, cracked, and then slowly began to come apart. "Hive vessel 2 is down." Someone screamed over the comms. "Repeat, hive vessel 2 is down." The Vethkai formation collapsed. Without the hive vessels to coordinate them, the remaining bioships became confused, attacking randomly, fleeing in all directions. The human fleet hunted them down one by one. Admiral Okonkwo slumped in his chair as the last enemy ship was destroyed. The battle was over, They had won, but the cost had been terrible. "Damage report," he said quietly. Kim pulled up the numbers. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. 43 ships destroyed. 12,417 confirmed dead. Unknown number wounded. The Thermopylae itself has taken heavy damage, but remains operational. Okonkwo nodded slowly. 12,000 lives. Friends. Colleagues. People who had trusted him to lead them into battle. Gone. But behind them, millions of innocent beings on 3 worlds would live another day. They would have time to evacuate now, time to escape to safety. 12,000 lives had bought that time. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies." "Channel open, sir." Okonkwo stood. His uniform was singed. His face was streaked with sweat and smoke. But his voice was strong. "This is Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Earth Navy, 3rd Battle Group. The Vethkai force in this system has been destroyed. 170 enemy vessels confirmed killed. No survivors." He paused, letting that sink in across the galaxy. No survivors. The Vethkai had never faced total defeat before today. To the Concord, the line is held. Your people are safe. Begin evacuation of the civilian population immediately. To any Vethkai who can hear this, this is what happens when you threaten beings under humanity's protection. We will find you. We will fight you. And we will destroy you. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will only be your complete and total extinction. To humanity, today we proved what we always knew. We are not victims. We are not prey. We are warriors, and the galaxy will remember this day forever." He took a breath. Okonkwo out. The transmission ended. Across the Concord, beings of every species heard the message and felt something change inside them. For the first time since the Vethkai arrived, they felt hope. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, the crew was silent. They were exhausted, wounded, mourning their dead. But they were also proud. They had done something no one else could do. They had stood against the darkness and refused to fall. Kim approached the Admiral. "Sir, orders?" Okonkwo looked at the tactical display. The system was clear. The enemy was dead. But out there, somewhere, more Vethkai were waiting. "Find the next battle," he said, "and take us there." The 3rd Battle Group began its repairs, gathered its wounded, and prepared to fight again. Behind them, they left a graveyard of alien monsters. Ahead of them lay more war, more death, more sacrifice. They went forward without hesitation. This was what they were made for. This was what humanity had always been waiting for. A chance to show the universe that some species do not break. Xenopsychologist Tehran had studied alien minds for 400 years. Her species, the Volanari, were perfectly suited for this work. They had 17 eyes, each one capable of reading different types of emotional information. They could see fear in the way a creature stood. They could detect aggression in the pattern of someone's breathing. They could understand an entire species just by watching them exist. She thought she understood humans. She had studied their history, their culture, their wars. She had written papers about their unusual psychology, their capacity for both tremendous kindness and terrible violence. She considered herself an expert. Then she actually met them. The Council had assigned her to the human flagship Defiance as an observer. Her job was to study how humans fought, to understand their methods, to report back anything that might be useful. It was supposed to be simple academic work. Nothing about it was simple. Her first shock came when she boarded the ship. Concord vessels were calm, quiet places. Soft lights. Gentle sounds. Spaces designed to promote peace and meditation. The Defiance was the opposite. It hummed with energy. Crew members moved through the corridors at quick paces, always going somewhere, always doing something. The lights were harsh. The sounds were loud. The entire ship felt like a weapon waiting to be fired. Her second shot came when she attended a briefing. Admiral Chun stood at the front of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing enemy positions. Her officers sat in rows before her, taking notes, asking questions, planning how to kill. The Veth Kai have established a major presence in the Korath cluster, Chine explained. Intelligence suggests they're building some kind of spawning facility there. If we let them complete it, they'll be able to produce new bioships faster than we can destroy them. What's the plan, Admiral? Asked the young captain with scars on his face. We're going to hit them hard and fast. 4th and 7th fleets will draw their main force away from the cluster. Once they're committed, 1st Fleet will drop in behind them and destroy the spawning facility. What about casualties? Chen's expression did not change. Expected losses are around 15%. Command has approved this as acceptable. 15%. Tron did a quick calculation. 1st Fleet had over 100 ships. 15% meant 15 ships, thousands of lives. And the humans called this acceptable. She raised her hand before she could stop herself. Admiral Chun, I have a question. Chun looked at her with those cold, measuring eyes. Go ahead, observer. You speak of losing 15% of your forces as if it is nothing. Do you not mourn? Do you not feel the loss of so many lives? The room went quiet. The human officers exchanged glances that Tron could not read. Chun's voice was soft when she replied. Of course, we feel it. Every death hurts. Every name on the casualty list is someone's child, someone's friend, someone's loved one. She paused. But we also know that some things are worth dying for. Those spawning facilities will kill millions of innocents if we let them survive. Our people will die so that others might live. There is no greater honor. Tron wanted to argue. Her species had given up violence so long ago that the very idea of dying for a cause was foreign to her. But looking at the faces around her, she saw no doubt. No fear. Only determination. You truly believe this, she said. We know this, Chun replied. It is who we are. Now, if there are no more questions, let's discuss the tactical details. The meeting continued. Tron watched and listened, her 17 eyes recording everything. She was beginning to understand something about humans that her papers had never captured. They were not violent because they enjoyed it. They were not aggressive because they could not control themselves. They had simply made peace with a truth that other species could not accept. Sometimes, violence was necessary. Sometimes, death was the only answer. And when that time came, humans did not hesitate. She saw this truth play out in the battles that followed. The 4th and 7th fleets engaged the Veth Kai main force exactly as planned. It was a brutal fight, lasting 3 days, with neither side willing to give ground. The humans lost ships. They lost people. But they held the enemy in place while 1st Fleet maneuvered into position. When 1st Fleet struck the spawning facility, Tron was aboard a support vessel watching the battle unfold. What she saw changed her understanding of warfare forever. Human Marines boarded the facility directly. Thousands of soldiers in armored suits, carrying weapons of every description, storming into the heart of enemy territory. The Veth Kai defenders outnumbered them badly. The fighting was desperate. Close-quarters combat in twisting corridors filled with alien horrors. The humans did not slow down. They did not retreat. They pushed forward through everything the Veth Kai threw at them, killing and dying in equal measure, never stopping until they reached their objective. Tron watched through a remote camera as a squad of Marines encountered a Veth Kai Guardian, a massive creature designed for nothing but killing. It was 3 times the size of the largest human, covered in natural armor, equipped with blades and teeth that could cut through steel. The squad leader, a woman named Sergeant Major Torres, did not hesitate. She ordered her squad to spread out and engage the creature herself, drawing its attention while her people flanked it. The Guardian struck her with one of its blades, cutting deep into her side. She fell, bleeding badly, but she did not die. Instead, she grabbed a grenade from her belt, pulled the pin, and shoved it into the creature's wound before it could finish her. The explosion killed the Guardian and badly wounded Torres. Her squad finished clearing the room. One of them ran to help her, applying medical treatment while the others provided cover. "Sergeant Major," the medic said, "you need to get to the evacuation point. This wound is serious." Torres shook her head. She was pale, sweating, clearly in tremendous pain. But her voice was steady. "Not until the mission is complete. Keep moving." She stood up on shaking legs and led her squad forward. They reached the core of the spawning facility 20 minutes later. Torres was barely conscious by then, held up by 2 of her soldiers. But she was there when they planted the charges. She was there when they detonated them. She was there when the spawning facility died. Tron watched all of this with growing disbelief. Her species would never behave this way. They could not imagine pushing through such pain, such injury, such certainty of death. They would have retreated, regrouped, found another way. Humans did not seem to understand the concept of another way. Later, she interviewed Torres in the ship's medical bay. The sergeant major was recovering, her wound sealed and healing, but she would carry the scar for the rest of her life. "Can I ask you something?" Tron said. "Sure." Torres's voice was tired but calm. "When you attacked that Guardian, you must have known you might die. Why did you not run? Why did you not let your soldiers handle it while you commanded from safety?" Torres laughed. It was not a mocking laugh, but genuine amusement. "You really don't understand us, do you?" "I'm trying to understand." "Okay." Torres shifted in her bed, wincing at the movement. "Here's the thing about humans. We don't ask our people to do anything we won't do ourselves. Officers lead from the front. Sergeants stand beside their soldiers. We all take the same risks, face the same dangers, die the same deaths. That's how we earn respect. That's how we build trust. But surely your experience is more valuable than my experience means nothing if my people don't believe in me. If I hid in the back while they fought and died, they would never follow me into battle again. And they shouldn't. A leader who won't risk their own life has no right to ask others to risk theirs." Tron processed this. It was alien logic to her, but she could see the truth in it. The human soldiers she had observed were fiercely loyal to their commanders, willing to follow them into impossible situations. Perhaps this was why. "There is something else I don't understand," she said. "During the battle, I heard your troops playing music. Strange, loud music with aggressive rhythms." "Why?" Torres grinned. "You mean the metal? That's just how we fight. Music helps us focus, keeps our energy up. Plus, it scares the hell out of the enemy. The Vethkai don't know what to make of it." "It scared you?" "Scared them." Torres's grin widened. "They're used to enemies who go quiet when they're afraid. Enemies who run. We come at them screaming and blasting music and laughing while we fight. It messes with their heads. They don't know how to process predators that enjoy hunting them." Tron noted this. She had seen the recordings. Human soldiers did not just fight. They fought with what almost looked like joy. They made jokes during battles. They celebrated kills. They turned the horror of combat into something that looked almost like a game. "Do you enjoy killing?" she asked quietly. Torres's expression became serious. "No, nobody sane enjoys killing. But we do enjoy winning. We enjoy protecting our people. We enjoy protecting our people. We enjoy proving that we're stronger than whatever is trying to hurt us. The fighting itself isn't fun, but the victory? The knowledge that you made a difference, that you saved lives, that you beat something that everyone said couldn't be beaten? She nodded slowly. Yeah, that part we enjoy. The war continued for years. Tron stayed with the human fleet through all of it, watching, learning, documenting everything. She saw battles that should have been losses turn into victories through sheer human determination. She saw soldiers accomplish impossible things simply because they refused to accept failure. She also saw the cost. The humans did not hide their dead. They held ceremonies for them, spoke their names, remembered their sacrifices. Every ship had a memorial wall where the faces of fallen crew members were displayed. Officers visited these walls regularly, touching the faces, saying silent words that Tron could not hear. They felt the loss. They carried the grief. But they did not let it stop them. How do you do it? She asked Admiral Chun one evening. How do you keep fighting, knowing that more of your people will die? Chun was quiet for a long moment. They were in her private quarters, a small room that showed surprising signs of warmth. Family photographs, books with worn covers, a small plant that she watered every day. Because stopping would be worse, she finally said. If we stop fighting, the Vethkai win. More worlds die. More species are consumed. Our people's deaths would mean nothing. She looked at one of the photographs, a picture of a young man in a naval uniform. My son died in the Battle of Kessler. First wave. He was 23 years old. Tron did not know what to say. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. He died protecting civilians who had no way to protect themselves. He died making sure others could live. That's exactly what he would have wanted. Chun turned to face Tron, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we love peace, and we know that sometimes peace has to be won with blood. Tron returned to the Concorde a changed being. Her report on human psychology was 3,000 pages long, filled with observations and analyses that challenged everything her species believed about violence. The summary was simple. Humans are not monsters. They are guardians. They have chosen to take the weight of violence onto themselves so that others do not have to. They suffer for this choice. They bleed and die and lose things they can never replace. But they keep fighting because they believe, with absolute certainty, that some things are worth fighting for. The Concorde should not fear humanity. The Concorde should be grateful that humanity exists. The High Council read her report. They discussed it for days. And slowly, their view of humanity began to change. These were not primitive creatures barely held back from savagery. These were beings who had looked at the full spectrum of their own nature, light and dark alike, and had chosen to use their darkness in service of the light. That was something the Concorde had never understood. They had tried to eliminate violence from their cultures, believing that was the path to civilization. Humans had taken another path. They had kept their violence, trained it, pointed it at things that deserved to be destroyed. Now the galaxy was learning that maybe, just maybe, the humans had been right all along. 7 years. 7 long, bloody, terrible years. The war against the Vethkai had stretched across the galaxy, touching every corner of known space. Worlds that had never known conflict learned what it meant to live in fear. Species that had forgotten the meaning of weapons learned to pray for salvation. And humanity delivered. They had fought battle after battle, losing thousands of ships and millions of lives. They had pushed the Vethkai back from the core worlds, then from the mid-rim systems, then from the outer territories. Every victory came at a terrible cost. Every step forward was paid for in blood, but they never stopped. They never slowed down. They never asked if the price was too high. Admiral Chen Weilin stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the stars drift past. She was older now, her gray hair turned white, her face lined with years of stress and grief. She had lost friends in this war. She had lost family. She had ordered attacks that killed people she knew and loved, but they had won. The final battle had taken place 3 weeks ago, in a place the humans called the Void Between. It was the space between galaxies, an emptiness so vast that light itself seemed to die there. This was where the Vethkai had come from. This was where they had to be stopped. The battle lasted 9 days. Every remaining human warship had participated, along with whatever Concord vessels could be convinced to join. They had faced the main Vethkai hive, a collection of bioships so large it had its own gravity. Billions of years of consumption, of growth, of evolution, all gathered in one place. It was the largest battle in galactic history. Ships died by the hundreds. The void burned with the fire of destroyed vessels. For a while, it looked like even humanity might not be enough. Then Admiral Chen ordered the deployment of the Sunbreakers. Nobody outside the human military knew what the Sunbreakers were. The technology was classified at the highest level, developed in secret during the 300 years of quarantine. They were weapons designed for one purpose: to close the dimensional gateway that the Vethkai used to travel between galaxies. The deployment required sacrifice. A squadron of volunteers flying specially modified ships into the heart of the Vethkai formation. They knew they would not survive. They went anyway. Commander David Okonkwo, son of the famous Admiral James Okonkwo, who had died 2 years earlier at the Battle of Crimson Reach, led the squadron. His last transmission was recorded and played at every memorial service that followed. This is Sunbreaker Lead. We are in position. Gateway coordinates locked. All Sunbreaker units, prepare for deployment. A pause. It's been an honor serving with you. All of you. Tell my father I'll see him soon. Sunbreaker Lead, engaging. The gateway collapsed. The dimensional rift that had allowed the Vethkai to enter this galaxy sealed shut forever. The remaining hive, cut off from its source of reinforcement and renewal, was destroyed in the hours that followed. The Vethkai were extinct. After 4 billion years of consuming galaxies, they had finally met something they could not defeat. Humanity. Now, 3 weeks later, Admiral Chen was traveling to the Concord's capital world to attend a ceremony. The Council wanted to honor humanity's sacrifice. They wanted to thank the species that had saved them all. Chen was not sure how she felt about it. Her aide, a young officer named Lieutenant Park, entered the observation deck. Admiral, we're approaching the capital. The Council has sent a formal welcome. I'm sure they have. Park hesitated. He had served under Chen for 3 years. He knew when something was bothering her. Ma'am, is everything all right? Chen did not answer for a long moment. She kept her eyes on the stars, watching them drift past like old friends. I keep thinking about the people we lost, she finally said. All the ships, all the soldiers, all the pilots who never came home. She turned to look at Park. We won, Lieutenant, but I'm not sure I feel like celebrating. The Council wants to give us everything, ma'am. Full Concord membership, a seat on the High Council, territory, reparations for the quarantine. They're calling us saviors. I know what they're calling us. Chen's voice was tired. They're calling us saviors because they're too afraid to call us what we actually are. What's that, ma'am? Chen smiled, but there was no joy in it. Warriors, killers, the species that does the dirty work so everyone else can keep their hands clean. She shook her head. They locked us in a cage for 300 years because they were afraid of what we might do. Now they want to reward us because we did exactly what they feared. Park did not know what to say. He was young enough that the quarantine was just history to him, something that had happened before he was born. But Chun remembered. She remembered the anger, the frustration, the knowledge that the galaxy had abandoned them because they were different. "What will you tell them, ma'am?" "The truth," Chun said. "I'll tell them the truth." The ceremony took place in the great chamber of the Concord, the same room where the decision to contact humanity had been made 7 years ago. Representatives from all 1,200 species were present. The room was decorated with banners and lights. Music played from hidden speakers. It looked like a celebration. High Counselor Morthax stood at the podium, his crystalline body glowing with pride and relief. He had survived the war, barely. He had watched his civilization nearly fall. Now he watched it celebrate its salvation. "We are gathered here today to honor the species that saved us all," he announced. "Humanity came to us in our darkest hour. They fought battles we could not fight. They made sacrifices we could not make. They bled and died so that we might live." He gestured toward Chun, who stood in the center of the chamber surrounded by her surviving officers. "Admiral Chun Wei-Lim, on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I offer you our deepest gratitude. And I offer humanity everything we have to give. Full membership in the Concord, a permanent seat on the High Council, and sovereignty over any unclaimed territories you wish to settle. You have earned this and more." The chamber erupted in applause. Beings of every shape and size clapped, stomped, and made whatever sounds indicated approval in their cultures. The noise was tremendous. Chun waited for it to die down. Then she stepped forward. "Thank you, High Counselor. The Concord's gratitude is appreciated." She paused, looking around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. "But I must respectfully decline your offer." The silence that followed was absolute. Morthax's light flickered with confusion. "Decline? I don't understand. Humanity does not want membership in the Concord. We do not want a seat on your council. We do not want your territory or your reparations." Chun's voice was calm but firm. "What we want is to be left alone to do what we do best, protect. But surely you deserve recognition, reward. After everything you have sacrificed, we sacrificed because it was right, not because we expected payment." Chun stepped closer to the podium, her eyes meeting Morthax. "You locked us away for 300 years because you were afraid of what we might become. You weren't wrong to be afraid, but you were wrong about why." She turned to address the entire chamber. "You feared we would conquer you, enslave you, do to you what the Vethkai did. That was never our intention. We build weapons because we know better than any species alive how quickly peace can shatter. We train for war because we've seen what happens to those who don't. We prepare for the worst because we've lived the worst. Again and again, throughout our history." She activated a holographic display behind her. It showed Earth, blue and green and white, small and fragile against the darkness of space. "This is our home. One world, orbiting one star in one small corner of the galaxy. Everything we are came from that tiny speck. And from that tiny speck, we spread across our solar system, then across the stars, always reaching, always growing, always surviving." The display changed to show images from the war. Ships in battle, soldiers fighting, the memorial walls covered with faces of the dead. "We lost millions in this war. Millions of our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers, our friends and lovers. We felt every death. We mourned every loss. But we kept fighting because we knew that if we stopped, you would all die." Chun's voice hardened. "We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it. Not because you deserve it, frankly. Many of you don't, but because it's the right thing to do. Because someone has to stand in front of the darkness and say no further. And if that someone has to be us." She smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. Well, we've had a lot of practice. The chamber was silent. Chun let the silence stretch, then continued. Here is what humanity proposes. No seat on the council, no political power, no territory beyond our original system. In exchange, we will serve as the galaxy's shield, independent, uncompromising, eternally vigilant. She met Morthak's eyes again. The Vethkai were not the only danger in the universe. They were just the first to find you. There are things out there in the dark that make the Vethkai look like children. Humanity knows this because we have spent 300 years listening, watching, preparing. We know what's coming, and when it comes, we will be ready. Morthax was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The Concord accepts humanity's terms. You will be our shield, and we will support you in whatever way you require. Chun nodded in return. Then we have an agreement. The ceremony continued, but the tone had changed. This was not a celebration anymore. It was something else, an acknowledgement that the universe was dangerous, and that someone had to stand between the danger and the innocent. Humanity had accepted that role willingly. In the months that followed, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. The Vethkai were gone, but the scars of their invasion remained. Worlds needed rebuilding. Refugees needed homes. The Concord had work to do. Humanity went back to preparing. They expanded their shipyards. They improved their weapons. They trained new soldiers to replace the ones they had lost. They watched the edges of known space with sensors that could detect threats light years away. And in the deepest voids, in the spaces between galaxies where things older and darker than the Vethkai stirred in endless hunger, something ancient became aware of what had happened. The Vethkai had been its children. Not its only children, but its favorites. It had sent them to consume, to grow, to prepare the way for its own arrival. They had never failed before. Now they were gone, destroyed by something small, something insignificant, something that should not have been able to resist. The ancient thing reached out with its vast consciousness, touching the edges of the galaxy where its children had died. It tasted the residue of battle, the echoes of violence, the strange energy signatures of weapons that should not exist. It asked its remaining servants what had happened. Humans, they whispered back. The galaxy has humans now. The ancient thing considered this. It had consumed countless galaxies over billions of years. It had faced resistance before, brief flickers of defiance that were always crushed. Nothing had ever truly threatened it. But the Vethkai were gone, completely, every last one of them. And the things that had killed them were still out there, watching, waiting, preparing for the next battle. For the first time in eternity, the darkness hesitated. On the bridge of the rebuilt Thermopylae, the new Admiral James Okonkwo Jr. looked at the tactical display. His sensors had detected something at the edge of known space. Something big. Something that made his instincts scream danger. He smiled. All hands to battle stations, he ordered. Looks like we have work to do. Around him, his crew moved with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. Fighters prepared for launch. Across the human fleet, the same preparations were happening. Ships that had barely finished their repairs were ready to fight again. Soldiers who had just returned from leave grabbed their weapons and reported for duty. Pilots ran to their fighters without being ordered. The galaxy watched in awe. They had seen humans fight the Vethkai, but they had assumed that was a one-time thing. A desperate response to a desperate threat. Surely now that the crisis was over, humans would relax, rest, become peaceful like everyone else. They had not understood. They still did not understand. Humans did not fight because of the Vethkai. They fought because fighting was what they did. It was in their blood, in their bones, in their very souls. They had spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy anything that threatened them. They had hoped to never use those skills, but they had never stopped practicing. Admiral Chun, now retired, watched the fleet mobilize from her home on Earth. She sat in a chair by the window, looking up at the night sky where human ships were gathering like stars preparing for battle. Her granddaughter, a young woman who had just been accepted to the Naval Academy, sat beside her. "Grandmother," the girl asked, "are you afraid?" Chun thought about the question. She remembered all the battles she had fought, all the friends she had lost, all the terrible things she had seen and done in the name of protecting her people. "No," she said finally. "I'm not afraid." "Why not?" Chun reached out and took her granddaughter's hand. "Because I know what we are. I know what we can do. The darkness is coming, child. It's always coming. But we are humanity. We were born in fire. We were raised in conflict. We were forged by 10,000 years of war against ourselves and everything that tried to destroy us." She smiled, and in that smile was everything humans had ever been. The violence and the love, the fear and the courage, the darkness and the light. Whatever is out there, whatever is coming for us, we will face it together. We will fight it together. And we will win together. She looked back at the sky, where the fleet was now moving toward the unknown threat. We are humanity, and we are very, very good at violence. The ships jumped to faster than light speed, vanishing from view. Across the galaxy, species who had never known peace because of the Vethkai began their first night of untroubled sleep. They did not know what was coming. They did not know what waited in the darkness between galaxies. They did not know that the universe was full of things that wanted to consume them, destroy them, erase them from existence. But they knew one thing: humanity was watching over them. And as long as humans existed, nothing would touch them. The darkness continued to hesitate. In the vastness of space, in the spaces between stars where light never reached, the ancient thing observed the human fleet. It watched their ships move with purpose and precision. It saw their weapons, their shields, their endless preparations for war. It made a decision. Not yet, it thought. Not this galaxy. Not these creatures. For the first time in billions of years, the darkness turned away and went looking for easier prey. Behind it, humanity kept watching, kept preparing, kept standing guard over a galaxy that had once feared them and now depended on them. Some species were meant to be farmers. Some were meant to be artists.